right, guys. I was supposed to hide him to give the little mystery thing to drag it out a little bit longer. Alf Ortega from 3 yards per carry has decided to grace my little rinky-dink program and jazz up the joint, guys. I'm going to do an interview tonight. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I met Alf 3 years ago. He just showed up in my comment section. He's like, hey, I'm a pro. And he was like saying something like, yeah, you know, whatever. He's like, no, really. But I tell you, you know, we've spoken so many times in the comments and here and there. Alf is a true professional, guys, and you might not always agree with him, and that's not the point of this thing. This thing is about, you know, at least what I see from him and from me, this is an intellectually driven process. And anytime you can hear somebody say something, and that's why I like my guests, you know, oh, they're just regular guys, you know, but everybody has perspective, information, and it can always drive you to a better evaluation. I think Alf told me one time, he's like, I watch every game every week on all 22. And I'm like, what? I'm like, that is really impressive. And to me, Alf has 3 things that you should, you know, whatever you agree or you don't agree, that you should really take as something that is a shining example of what sports media is about. Hard work. He's approachable. He treats people small like me in this media industry, just regular Joes. He'll converse with them. And as long as the conversation is a good one and it's honest, he engages. And that shows he's a people person. And then, you know, it's the diligence that he has. So, guys, we're going to do an interview of Alf. I'm not really going to be here too much. If you have any comments, direct them towards Alf. He talks to the players. He's been doing this a very long time, and it's a very unique opportunity to talk to him and get his evaluation and then compare it to yours. And that's what this thing's all about. So anyway, guys, Alf, just give us a lowdown. Most people probably know you. They're not dummies like me. Just give us you know, lowdown of what you're into, you know, all your platforms and who you are, how long you've been doing this, and the yada yada.
Well, I'm a co-host of 3 Yards Per Carry. We are the most listened to, most downloaded independent Dolphins podcast there is. We've been doing it for 7 years. We've had a lot of success with my partners, Chris Kaufman and Simon Clancy. You know who those guys are. Chris Kaufman is one of the best football analysts anywhere. Simon Clancy is a veteran of the BBC. He's covered, I believe. He likes to bring it up every Super Bowl season that he's covered like 25 Super Bowls. So you know where his credentials lie. Myself, I got started at doing some subcontracting work for Yahoo, for ESPN, for CBS Sports. And if you're wondering what I actually did, you know those little nifty stats you would see on like NFL Live about 15 to 20 years ago. Well, that was
you. Oh, wow. I didn't know that, dude. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was me. And then I got started on the TV side doing a show down here called Sports Bang with a couple of guys from the Lebitard crew. They're one of the biggest sports podcasts in the world right now. You could see them on their YouTube channel. And that show ran for 5 years. I was executive producer of that TV show. And
bigger than I thought, man. Because you are legit.
Yeah, I have my own office at CBS. Yes,
wow,
my own office.
Did
and
not know
you want to hear the funny thing about this? Since the show was brokered, the guy who ran the show, John Wiener, who is Stu Gatz of the Lebitard show, he decided to shutter the show because he had just signed a large contract with ESPN, and ESPN, I guess, was requiring him to shutter the show. And that week, I was showed my new office that was overlooking the newsroom at CBS. I never got to sit in that office. But that was a really fun show, and that show ran for 5 years. I was executive producer for 4. So it was a good time. And it was during the Heat Big 3 era. So it was a good time to be a sports fan here in Florida.
That's awesome. So okay, I want to take it back just a little bit farther. What era did you become a Dolphins fan, And like, how did you, we all have, I always find like the story about how someone becomes a fan always really interesting. So how did you actually, what's the day you said, hey, I'm a Dolphins fan? Like, how did that come about quickly?
Yeah, 1981. Really, I could even point to the exact game. I watched games on and off in 1981. I saw the divisional game against the Chargers at home. I was sitting in my living room and I saw that Dolphin comeback fall short. Later on that month, I saw the 49ers defeat the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl. And I thought to myself, this is fun. I wanted my team to play in that game. And I'm now a Dolphin fan. And ever since then, I can honestly say I've seen every single Dolphin game since then.
Wow. Well, I haven't. I had a few periods where I just, for whatever, because of my life, or when Dan Marino retired, I was really disengaged. I really didn't like Stash, and so you I think you're better than me. And also, you know what I noticed too? You got a good memory. My memory is not as like I remember things far more vaguely than you. I see some of these fans and I remember so much. I've seen so much, but it just kind of like fades into the background. So that's a huge aspect, I think, of you and a lot of these fans that I see in the comments section. So, okay, I always find too, if you ask somebody who their favorite players are, you get a gauge. And let's not do Dan Marino. Everybody likes Dan Marino, But aside from Dan Marino, who would you say your 4 or 5 favorite players? That would.
I love Dwight Stevenson, and it's a shame that his career got cut short by Marty Lyons.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yes, I remember the game.
I was a New Yorker, so I got the Jets games. That's like the
it was Monday Night Football. It was Monday Night Football in a game that ended up 45-3 in favor of Miami. Okay,
so much lost.
And sure enough, it was an interception, I believe, and Marty Lyons cut Dwight Stevenson on the sideline, and there went his knee. And it wasn't like today where ACLs are easily repaired and everybody comes back from them. Back then, it was kind of a big deal, and he blew out every ligament. I believe it was ACL, MCL, LCL. And that ended his career. Other guys are obvious ones. I love Zach Thomas.
Yeah,
I loved Ricky. I love Ricky Williams.
Oh, dude, he brought me back. The Stash was driving me away like Frankenstein, dude. But Ricky brought me back.
Ricky Williams. When I saw him play at Texas, I was like, my God, whoever gets this guy. That was back then when having a great running back was actually kind of sexy. Now nobody cares. Now the best running backs get $10 million a year, while cornerbacks get 30.
You hurt me. Don't hurt me.
But I love Ricky Williams, and and another favorite of mine, Brian Cox, man.
Oh yeah, he's definitely right there, man.
And he's a great guy. A great guy.
Yeah.
I met him many a times, and he was not like his persona.
I got a question for you about Cox. Hoss, before you get into that.
Yeah.
Do you think he should have stayed outside linebacker? Do you think that he was kind of the middle linebacker? For me, I thought he should have stayed outside linebacker and been that attack blitzing kind of guy. When Shula moved him inside, I don't know. What do you think about that? Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. New England at the end of his career started using him as a fill linebacker, which when they started doing that, I was like, this makes no sense to me. No. Then they won Super Bowls, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm wrong. And Belichick,
but he was older then. He wasn't the same. He didn't have the same pop.
Yeah, I guess Belichick took a diminishing skill set and said, you know what, he can still run the gaps and hit people. So I still remember
the playoff game against the Chargers when he popped Natron Means and didn't wrap and knocked them out of the hole with all the tacklers, and he had that big run down to I think it was maybe even a touchdown or something. And I just always hated him at middle line. I loved him, don't get me wrong, but I just anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
My memory of that game, in that playoff game against the Chargers, was Marco Coleman hitting Natron Means at the 5-yard line and him fumbling. And since we didn't have replay back then, they could not overturn that call.
I don't know.
3 plays later, they had a touchdown. So who knows? Maybe we have Dan Marino in Pittsburgh the following week in the AFC Championship game had we had replay.
Well, here's a weird. I don't want to guess. I met Keith Jackson's cousin. I was working with him, and he was saying some things like there was some. If you go back, there was some really weird stuff with that last drive with Keith Jackson, and there was some weird stuff. And then you got the missed field goal. I don't know. It just seemed like it was like a lot of. My friend, I went to
the play before the field goal. Okay, because they were setting up a 42-yard field goal. The play before that field goal, they called a deep ball to Mike Williams.
Yeah.
And Marino just missed him. He missed him by a hair. If not, it's a touchdown and the game's over. So
I got to go back.
Sometimes
how can you? I got a question for you. You know this stuff. How can you go back and watch these old games? It kills me that you can't do it. Is there any way to access these games? Like
they're mostly on YouTube.
It's so hard.
Like if you look on YouTube, there's a guy that's pretty good about uploading some of these games, and it's pretty fun to watch.
Oh, they're awesome.
I don't
know why doesn't the NFL offer a package about that?
They should, right?
That's insane.
They have their NFL Plus package, but that only goes back about 10 years or something like that.
That's the press. I don't know why they don't do that, man. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry. I keep getting you off track. Any other great players, man?
No, that's pretty much it. Those are awesome. The guys that stand out to me.
All right, Mr. Success has got a comment, guys. Your comments are really going to be the focus along with Alf tonight. So he wants to hear your thoughts on Weaver and your evaluation on Tua.
Well, I really like what Tua has done. He's a top 10 quarterback. He's in his fourth year. The last 2 years, he's top 3 or 5 in almost every single quarterback metric. He was a legitimate passing leader last year. He wasn't doing it in garbage time. His passing yardage led to the number 1 offense in football, the number 2 scoring offense in football. So those were a legitimate 4,600 yards. This wasn't a guy that was 8 and 9 and shooting it up every single week, shooting it out every single week to try to come back from double-digit deficits. Like his passing yards led to wins. I like Tua a lot. He has a lot to work on, but he's a top 10 quarterback. Will he be elite, top 3 in his career? Probably not. But you don't need that. If you have a top 10 quarterback, you're way ahead of everybody else. You're ahead of 2/3 of the league.
Oh yeah. So it's a team game. It's a team game.
So yeah. And his other question was about Weaver. We really don't know. All we know about him is his press conference, and now we're beginning to see some of his personality seeping into what Chris Greer is doing with this defensive line. I really like the signing today, Tua Tart.
I didn't see Tart. That's a good signing.
Yeah, they signed him today, and it's getting kind of crowded in there, but that kind of tells you what Weaver wants to do with this defensive line. He's going to want to rotate all these guys, and we can only take him at his word, right? He says that he's going to run a lot of stuff that McDonald ran last year. That means predominantly cover 3. The team is set up to play a lot of cover 3. They have the athletes for it.
Yeah.
Think about it. You could put all of these guys in those different roles. You could put, Javon Holland in Kyle Hamilton's role. You could put Jordan Poyer in Geno Stone's role. You don't necessarily have that Marcus Williams, but, the free agency can still, Quadri Diggs is still out there, and that's a guy I love to see in a Dolphin uniform. So we can only take him at his word, which means, you're going to see some over fronts, a lot of 50 fronts, which is something that I love this team last year when they played those 50 fronts. Now, it's a little bit different. There's no Christian Wilkins. Playing a 50 front with Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer is a different thing,
Well, Sealer to me, I love the guy. I used to write, I still do, but not as much as I used to, Finn's News. And we made the trade, not trade, he was the what do they call that? The waiver wire. I really was excited about him, and I was really pushing it early on. I love the guy a ton for his personality, his ability, but he's really good at that 3 technique, 4 and 5. Once he gets inside, I don't know who they're going to get to play inside. Like I was a GAWA is on here. I talk to him all the time, and he says that he thinks that they're not going to be running that big nose tackle. They're going to kind of run something a little different. I mean, do you think they're going to get that nose tackle, that 330, 340 guy in there, or they're going to kind of go with maybe like like you said, the 50 front, or they're going to run more one gap? I mean, how do you think they're going to run this? It seems like he was saying that they're not going to run as much two gap. And that could be very interesting. But if you're running a lot of one gap, then you're possibly putting your linebackers to be exposed unless they can attack, stack, and shed, or navigate their way through the blockers. So I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm sure you have a better idea on that. So you can talk about that.
Yeah, I think that the way the team is set up right now, if they're going to go get that big zero to play, somewhere around 20 snaps, and then really set off a 50 front, a real 50 front, and cover the center almost on every running down, every first and second down. It's going to have to come with Sweat from Texas in the second round at 55. Because if it doesn't, as of right now, they're set up to play Benito Jones about 12 snaps a game as a zero. And then they're just going to throw bodies at one shade and three tech, with Sealer moving from 3-4 to 5. And they're going to play their edges the same way that they've played them before. So a lot of 50 fronts, a lot of over fronts. And the way they're going to help their linebackers out is by playing them not in the traditional sense of having a fill and a scrape. And by the way, for those of you that don't know what that means, fill just means that you're reading two gaps. You're reading one gap on either side of the guard and the center, and you're reading the B gap between the tackle and the guard. The scrape is just reading exclusively to the outside. He's contained. They might not do things like that. Okay, so you might see some eagle stuff, eagle fronts. They might play their linebackers to, in a more traditional sense. So they'll be covered by defensive tackles. So maybe that'll help them run free. We just don't know. The first time we're going to get an inkling of what they're going to do is on OTAs, because OTAs are really instructive. A lot of people that cover the team look at OTAs and say, this is just guys running around in underwear, I look at it a bit differently. I look at their install periods, and their install periods are telling you what they're running in the regular season.
100%.
It's as simple as that. Because there's stuff that I saw in training camp where I was like, okay, that's tricky. That's nice. I like this. And then you saw it week 1. You saw it week 2. You saw it week 3. All you do is you make a note of it, and you see these fronts, and you say, this is different. This is something I haven't seen before. It's an install. It's something that they're going to use in the regular season. So I'm eager to see what Weaver is going to roll out come OTAs. I believe that's in a month, if I'm not mistaken.
Jose, GAWA, he's always talking. He and I have some long conversations. He's trying to get through to me on some stuff. Well, he really helps me out a lot. So he's got a good question here. Tell us what Tua's QB coach this offseason, and what should he be working on? Thanks.
Well, I guess he's going to work with John Beck and Tom House. At least nobody's had confirmation of this, although everybody keeps saying it and it hasn't been denied. So you kind of assume that it's true, right? Tom House is gonna work on his consistency in mechanics. Tua tends to fade during the season, okay? And it's not that he has bad mechanics; it's that he doesn't have consistent mechanics, okay? You see it sometimes in the fourth quarter of games in December where he's on the back foot or he's leaning away from his target, not following through, not firing his hips. If they're going to do that, that's going to go a long way to making him a much better quarterback and a much more consistent quarterback going forward.
Well, can I answer? My personal evaluation on that is that, everything that you do is predicated on prior responses. And so since Tua has been in this league, he's had poor protection. He's had a poor run game. He's been asked to carry. And I like to. You can go back and check my lots of stuff about saying who this guy is. But he's not Dan Marino. Dan Marino is like a unique character that you could say, here, Dan, take everything. It could be 5 minutes left. He's down 20. But Josh Allen doesn't even have that persona. You could see Josh Allen kind of mentally wilt when there's so much on the table. And, you could see as offensive line picked up for Allen, they ran the ball and took a little bit off the plate, things kind of would be easy for him. Now, 2021 season was a terrible offensive line. And then 22, it was, I thought it was better. There's a lot of additions there, but he took a beating. And the run game really wasn't there. This year, the run game was there, but not in the totality that I personally saw. And there was this throwing fast. And my belief is it was thrown fast out of necessity for the most part, not out of, hey, this is what we want to do. It's what we have to do. And so I just think that maybe as games go on, the pressure starts coming, the need to have to throw it so fast, because he understands protection through watching film, being in those games, and the clock that's running. Hey, we got to get it out. And I just think that there's sometimes maybe too much on the table. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Most of it was by necessity. There was games that I charted. I didn't chart every single game. There's a guy that writes books.
I like that OCD type A persona.
Yeah, there's a guy that writes books on offenses. There's his name is Bobby Peters, and you could get his books on Amazon. He's not my partner or anything. He just writes really good books.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote one on the Dolphins offense in 2022, and I love that book. That book is
check it out.
As instructive as you can get. You can look it up on Amazon. Bobby Peters is his name.
Yeah,
and he wrote another one on 2023, and he charts every single game. So if you want to see what they called every single play of the season, check out his stuff. And he kind of gives up the ghost, kind of. There was a game this year where I charted it, and I looked at his book to see if I got it right. And lo and behold, yes, I got it right. It was against New England, the first game against New England in New England this year.
Yeah.
It was, I believe, the fastest Tua threw the ball all season.
It was like 198 or something, or 195.
Yeah, it was like 1.98 or something like that. In that game, they had 8 pass pro sets. That's it. The entire game. And out of those 8, AJ Jackson, Austin Jackson, who is a guy that I think has worked on his body, worked on his game, and he's an improving player. He had Matthew Judon in pass pro 4 times. He gave up 2 pressures and 1 sack.
Yeah.
So that shows you that the offense was being hidden by play call, by their quarterback, and mainly by philosophy by Mike McDaniel.
Okay, so I had so many other questions, man. I'm really enjoying this, Alf. There's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's a psychological understanding that the less you know about something, the more you think you know, and the more that you actually know, the less you realize you do know. And I think that, we had a great discussion. I wished what we had said. I think we got some of it out before the show started. Football is so complex. I mean, you go back and you listen to Shane Gale, and he was talking about Fitzpatrick with his system. And he said, I can't remember the exact term, but he's like, Fitz sort of guy, defender, and his hand was in the ground in a certain way. He understood what he was coming. And based off that, he threw a touchdown, or a big play came off that. So you got 22 guys on the field, clock's ticking down, 60, 80,000 people around you. And simply the hand technique of a defensive lineman gives you the tell to make the success on that play. That's how complex this game is. And, I know sometimes I distill things down to a basic formula and kind of, I put a broad sense on it, and it's foolish. But this game is so complex. It takes, Flores, you like him or don't, he would say, I don't know. I got to go watch the tape. You're asking me those questions. I don't know. I just watched the game. There's no way to absorb this game without intense amount of effort. And I think that, unfortunately, the sports coverage industry is just it's all about surface stuff. And there is elements that are true, but you can't talk about what really happened by talking about this surface stuff. So I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate this kind of dialogue. This is what I think that fans need, football needs. So I'm really grateful. Anyway, keep on going.
Yeah, you were asking about how they're covering up for him. Yeah, absolutely. And the run game is essentially all an outside zone run game. Very little gap stuff, very little leads. From Bobby Peters' book, I also charted a few games. They average about 4 leads per game.
Yeah.
Which is league low, I believe. They're
Yeah.
actually not so bad running lead 22-23, you know.
I had a conversation. GAWA. I had a conversation with her on this. I want to dig into that inside stuff. I want to chart the whole season with film. I think that's going to be an interesting thing. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Then again, you don't have Robert Hunt anymore, so that's going to change things. And Robert Hunt helps some of those numbers, but they average something like 5.1 yards per carry, which is pretty good because since from day one, I always learned a well-blocked lead play is a guaranteed 4 yards against any defense anywhere. It's just a matter of you block it correctly. You just have more bodies where the running back is going. 4 yards should happen.
Well, the thing that I really like on lead, whether it's I offset, I weak strong, whatever whatever kind of inside A gap B gap run is that, and I think you can see this with Josh Allen, is the quarterback when he takes that snap under center and he turns his back to the defense, the whole defense can't see the ball and there's a hesitation. And if you're a heavy passing team, it actually creates an advantage on both ends. And so that inside running game begins to creep the secondary. It creeps those linebackers. And it does so much to open up the edges, the deep, and the middle. I love that play. And it wears teams out. It wears guys out. I still think there's a place for that in football. So.
No, absolutely. There absolutely is. Now, Miami doesn't run too much of it. Do they have the bodies to run it now? Probably not.
No.
Can they get those bodies? Yeah, there's several guys in the draft that you can draft in the first or second round that would fit that mold, that would fit that Robert Hunt mold. So, yeah, I'm interested to see what they're going to do with the running game this year. I thought they took some bigger steps last year. If they're going to use the passing game to open up this running game with Odell Beckham, if they're going to actually sign Odell Beckham, and I believe that he is the best target out there for them, then that's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do out of 11 personnel, because that's not something that they've actually done here for 2 years. They're a 21 personnel running team, so we shall see. But it's going to be interesting. Mike McDaniel always likes to talk about the evolution of his offense, and he hasn't disappointed. I like coaches that come in promising something and deliver. Brian Flores promised better defense, delivered. His problem was he had issues hiring coaches on the offensive end. Mike McDaniel came in promising better offense, and he has delivered. So I am interested to see what he's going to roll out as his further evolution this coming season.
I got a good point here. Kevin Dorsey, I talk all the time to him. He said, problem with the inside run game is it goes out the window anytime a team can successfully press Tyreek. And as Al said, you just don't have the bodies to run inside because they're built to run outside. And I think that, to me, and GAWA, I talk to him all the time about philosophy. I personally think that the Dolphins are leaning heavy. The draft could change that into their outside edge pop run and passing game. They don't have the tight ends to block. The receivers are small. They do a nice job. Waddle and Tyreek can do a nice job, but they don't have the receivers. They don't have the tight ends, and they don't really have any drive blockers. And so I think it's just the bodies are not there. Now, you could get, like you said, one good guard that can drive and slide, and it could open. They don't need a lot inside, but I just don't know if I don't think it's in the cards, because you've got. I think Chris Greer, and I'm not the biggest fan of Chris Greer. I think he just said, "Hey, look, this is our strength. let's lean heavy into it. And I think that's why you're seeing like a Odell Beckham or maybe a third wide receiver drafted, and just push it as hard as you can. And maybe it could take, I just don't know if we're going to be able to do that, that kind of stuff, which I'd love. But anyway, hey, Gary, what's going on? All right, what do you think right now with the draft? You're way better at the draft. I mean, I just don't have time to watch that stuff. I kind of take certain players. What are you seeing right now as far as where the Dolphins are at? Give us a couple of scenarios. What do you think that smoke and mirrors? They're going to take an offensive lineman because one could be there, or you think they're going? What do you think? Just give us your lowdown. You're very accurate in the draft.
Well, the odds that they're going to take an offensive lineman have improved because they keep adding more defensive tackles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pushing Johnny Newton, Byron Murphy out of that discussion at 21. So that's going to leave you a wide receiver or an offensive lineman. And it's really going to depend how that board shakes out for you, because I think there's enough value at wide receiver that you could pass on some of these guys at 21, and you're going to like what's there for you at 55. So is Graham Barton something that's going to, open their eyes to maybe they're going to invest pick 21 into an interior offensive lineman? Graham Barton, has essentially been stalked all offseason by the San Francisco 49ers. What are they? They're a Shanahan team, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we are. So it stands to reason that we're probably in on him as well. The guy that I think would be just, although I'm fearful that it's just not going to happen, and this is probably pie in the sky stuff. Troy Fautano of Washington, I think is just, you can't ask for a better fit. If he can drop to you at 21, that's a guy that you just draft and you pencil him in as your starting left guard. And in a year when Tehran is retired, he moves out to be your left tackle, and you're fine.
You need that. It's so hard. This is, it takes me a little while. I'm very slow to process information I'm new on because I got this like OCD thing. But I'm going through this tackle group. It is very impressive with the potential. Yeah. And I don't know if you're going to be able to get something like this again for a while, because usually you have this deep draft at a position group, and then it's like flat lines for a year or two before it refills. But I don't know. To me, I think that if the Jets do what the Jets usually do, is do the wrong thing, and they go for, say, Brockers, you could see a nice tackle sitting there. I think if they grab a tackle, it might leave us shorthanded, maybe not, so I don't know.
Yeah, the great thing about the Jets this year is that they're probably not going to be drafting with the best intentions. They're going to be drafting
Jets, go.
Yeah, they're going to be drafting to save their jobs and to try to make Aaron Rodgers work at 40 years old coming off of an Achilles. So they're not thinking, 2-3 years down the road, okay? If they were, they're probably taking a quarterback at 10. Your quarterback is 40 years old. He's not long for this game. If you think you're going to be good, you're probably not going to be drafting this high again. So might as well get your quarterback now, right? But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to get something that's ready-made for now, and that probably means a wide receiver or even Brock Bowers, possibly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Bowers, that's his name. I'm going to call him Brockers. Mr. Broccoli.
But for those first 2 rounds, man, you really can't miss on a lot of these guys. Even at 55, you could flip-flop them. Like if there's a wide receiver that or you feel in your room, look, we can't pass on this guy. We've done all the work. Everybody likes him. Mike McDaniel likes him. Wes Welker has signed off on him. This is the guy we need and we want, and he's here at 21. You could take him there, and then at 55, you're still going to have a lot of good guards available. Christian Mahogany is a great player. He's going to be a really nice player, very much in the mold of Robert Hunt, and Robert Hunt was taken in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
If you want that master, Cooper Beebe is that guy. If you want a guy that's going to be a good drive blocker, that's him. And my favorite at 55 is out of Connecticut, Christian Haynes. There's not much.
Who'd you say my totem animal was? Was that him?
That's him. Okay. His film, and I love to see him, his work at the Senior Bowl. You can find it on YouTube. On YouTube, there's
I
clips
will.
that have every single one of his reps against the other guys at the Senior Bowl, and you could see him lining up as a guard on those one-on-one drills where he takes 1-2 kicks and he sets, and he's not moving, and neither is the defensive tackle that's in front of him. He's just locked up. He has as good an anchor as I've seen in a while. Uh, there's not much work of him like getting down the field as a guard. There is some work of him just tossing people.
That's
Okay.
good. I like that. I like that.
And
I
and he
like
really,
that.
really does, even on his build, because he's a barrel chested. He's not a big guy. I believe he's 6'2.5", almost 6'3".
Good leverage. That's a good leverage zone.
He's big barrel chested guy with wide waist.
That's
Big
key.
thighs. He reminds me a lot of. I think you can remember this guy. You remember Harry Galbraith from the '90s? He was the left guard for Dan Marino and the Dolphins.
Nah, man. I know.
He left the Dolphins, then he went to the Packers. He reminds me a lot of him. And
Yeah,
man, you want to make Tua happy, man, get guards in front of him that have these solid anchors that are going to keep all the trash at his feet away. Because Tua can handle pressure from the outside. That's not a problem.
Well, I think
The
that's
pressure from the inside
Yeah.
is the issue.
Well, that's the thing. I think, I've been trying to grow on my understanding of football for like a decade now. Back in the 80s and the 90s, it was all about left tackle and your best pass rusher. But as the game became quicker throws, it was the interior pressure. And for me, my personal belief is this rise in prices of the center and the guard is because DCs understand you don't have time to get these big outside rushes, especially when the pocket's clean, the quarterback steps up, the ball's already out. You got to get that interior pressure because once you fold that pocket and you get hands up, it's the only really way to get on a consistent basis the kind of pressure to negatively affect the quarterback. The big outside, pass rushes, they're here and there, but it's this interior stuff. And that's why I think that it really hurts me because I like Tua. I think he's a good guy. I don't know, like you said, I don't know if he's going to be a great quarterback, but Connor and Hunt were huge for his success. And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see him get a quality 15th. Give me 15th in depth and talent. And then I think you can fairly eval this kid. So I don't know. I would love to see that. I don't think they're going to. I think that other kid you were saying that the San Francisco are looking at, more mobile guy. I just think they're going to lean heavy into the finesse stuff. I don't think they're going to get a guy kind of like, because if you watch Hunt was good on wide zone, but in inside zone was where he was really at. I just think they're going to lean heavy into that finesse stuff. So the outside,
I was a big Robert Hunt guy, and
oh yeah,
I was called crazy. I was called crazy, and it turns out I was completely wrong. But I was called crazy when I was saying that he was going to sign a 5-year, $50 million contract, and he'd signed a contract that was double that. All right. But he's capable of playing tackle. He's capable of playing guard.
So huge.
I'm pretty certain if you taught him how to snap a football, he could play center too. He's a fabulous player, and he was just priced out of here. And $20 million for a guard, as good as the guy is, man. If you told me he's headed to the Hall of Fame, I don't know how you can pay $20 million to a guard.
I don't know. I think that, in 22, they could have. If they, I personally feel that Chris Greer, for whatever reason, either A, didn't see the market going to jump at the DT spot and at the guard spot. And I think he maybe not believed in the talents of the players and thought he could get a deal somehow. But they could have had him at a more reasonable price. But to me, I think I believe that we've entered an age where skills, they got to have certain skills. You got to have certain skills. And I believe that the talent, but these guys inside, they're not just big guys. You're not having your 2 days. You're not getting your practice. It's so hard to overcome that. The refs are letting holding calls go like nobody's business because they understand the product would look like garbage if they don't. But if you don't got that talent, then it's like all wild inside. That's where the consistency comes from, is that offensive line. And I think you gotta, either you draft well, like a Zach Tom, or, Creed Humphreys, or you find a guy like Hunt and you just say, look, this is my future. And 20 million, you can cut someplace else. I just feel like you need studs on your offensive line. And that's always been that's my biggest concern for the Dolphins. I just think the best teams had the best offensive lines. They're the ones, you get into this, especially if you're in the AFC East. It's an ugly, I'm going on too much. You get ugly weather. You need to be able to run the football, run inside and protect. So I don't know. We'll see. This is going to be, to me, this is so interesting from a philosophy standpoint. So this year, let's get back to you. Some comments. I was going on a little too much. I love offensive line talk. I get drunk on it. So what do you think the AFC is going to look like heading into this draft? Maybe a quick glimpse post-draft. Where the Dolphins fit inside that. I wanted to get into the AFC, but it's getting a little bit later here. So just give me your overall view on all four teams, focusing on the Dolphins pre and maybe post. What do you think is going to play out like?
Yeah, and you're talking about the AFC East, right?
Yeah, AFC East.
Yeah, the Bills are going to be fine because they have Josh Allen. Okay, I kind of like what they've leaned into as far as an offensive philosophy from midseason on. But here's the thing again. Offensive coordinators must evolve. Joe Brady really has not shown that he's capable of moving it from one season to the next in the NFL. But let's say he does. If he does, and there's going to be another evolution of that Bills offense, they're going to be just fine because McDermott he's really adept at molding the talent that he has available to him on the defensive end to get a good defense out of it.
You see, that's the thing. That's why, guys, you got to appreciate Alf in a lot of ways, because he is very easy to go fandom and say, McDermott sucks, the Bills are dead. But, that's why, you said, I think one of your tweets, I watched the tweet thing. I'm still trying to figure it out. You said, I don't do many cold takes. I'm really good at this. And you have to be intellectually honest. That's the other point I wanted to say about you in the beginning. It slipped my mind. My brain is a little gimpy sometimes. You're intellectually honest, I think, as much as you can be. I mean, everyone's a little dishonest. Me, I'm a little, everyone is. But I think you got a strong intellectual honesty. So I appreciate it. That's why I think a good reason why your evaluations are usually spot on.
And as far as the Jets, I like their defense. I like their philosophy on defense in the best world. Okay, let's say the best case scenario for the Miami Dolphins this year, they have a really successful year. Their defense is really, really good. Anthony Weaver gets a job elsewhere. We get a 3rd round pick because he parts as a minority candidate. And then the Jets have a disaster and we get either Jeff Ulbrich or Robert Saleh. Okay. And either guy would be a great defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins for a very, very long time. Their defense is going to be legit once again. I don't like that they lost Bryce Huff and replaced him with Hassan Reddick, because I tried to explain to people, Hassan Reddick is a nice player. He's a good player. Okay. But they're kind of different. They're different in how they play and how they line them up for the Jets. They're going to ask Hassan Reddick to do stuff that he did with the Cardinals, not stuff that he did with the Eagles. So it's going to be an adjustment. Okay.
I think he's more rounded than Huff.
Yes. Yeah, but it's going to mean that Jermaine Johnson is the one that's going to have to take a larger leap for the Jets. But I don't worry about their defense.
Do you think?
I think so too. I think
Jermaine Johnson can.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. I don't worry too much about their defense. All I worry about is that offense.
Do you think the offensive line is going to break down?
You're relying on a guy in Tyron Smith that
they've got to draft a tackle, don't they?
They must. There's no way you could go into the season. And I like both players, Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses.
I love Morgan Moses.
And I really, really like Jeff Simpson at left guard.
Yeah, you were saying that. I checked him out. You were right.
Yeah, that was an underrated signing, I thought.
Yeah, you said that.
Look at what you're relying on. You're relying on Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard.
Always injured.
Off of an Achilles.
And an injury before that, the year before.
Yeah. You're relying on Tyron Smith, who, if you thought Teron Armstead was a risk, Tyron Smith is more of a risk. Morgan Moses has had issues staying healthy as well. They're an injury or two away from having another disaster. We saw those first 4 snaps.
Yeah.
If you think that the Jets were going to win 12 games last year, if Aaron Rodgers stayed healthy, then you didn't watch those first 4 snaps when he was running for his life.
Well,
okay?
but that's
going to be a struggle for them.
Hackett, man, see, this is what I mean. Sometimes maybe I overestimate where I'm at, what I see or whatever. But why would you take 2 guys at a 330, 340 and make them cut block? Because once you make a cut block, if that doesn't happen, and even kind of if it does, that second move, the quarterback's exposed. And they did it 2 plays in a row, and it was pressures. I think Hackett is a very, very scary asset for the Jets. I mean, I think that was one of the most. You got to put a different block on that. I don't know. I think Hackett is the wild card to just because I think the talent's there, especially if they get a guy in a draft to tackle. But Hackett, man, I think that guy is something's a little, off with them.
Yeah, no, he's just not good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's just not good. I like Breece Hall a lot. Gary Wilson's a stud. Mike Williams is another guy that you have to, he has to stay healthy. He might
not even be back for the first game. He's still got a long recovery.
Yeah, he's a little gimpy going into the season. If I have Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to get guys that are going to be precise with their routes. I didn't like what they did last year getting Lazard. Now he's gone.
Spent a lot of money on that guy.
Yeah, I didn't understand that contract at all. I kept hearing people telling me, "Oh, he's a great blocker." Yeah, I understand he's a great blocker, but I'm not paying a wide receiver $10 million a year to block. I want him to catch passes.
And he dropped a lot. He dropped more than he caught, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he's very good. Okay, and then you get Randall Cobb, there is no last legs. There are no legs anymore. He left his best football in Green Bay 2 or 3 years ago. So they have, they can be dangerous, but they need a lot of luck. And then to round off the division, the Patriots, they did absolutely nothing in the offseason. They should be good on defense.
Back. I like bringing Onwenu back. I think that guy's a really good player.
Yes, I do. I agree. He's a really, really nice player. I
wish we had made a move for him.
Yeah, he earned every single dollar that they paid him because he has a lot of versatility. He could play right tackle. He could play inside. He could play pretty much anywhere you want to play him.
Yeah.
Their defense should be okay, but they're just going to be one of those pesky teams that
I agree.
That, they're going to win 5 games, 6 games. They might have a rookie quarterback, which is not going to make them, that dangerous. They still lack a lot of skill talent.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, free agents refuse to go there for whatever reason. And then you have Miami, and Miami, it's gonna be up to their health. Last year they won 11 games as the most injured team in football. They cannot have what happened to them on their offensive line last year repeat. You cannot have your top 3 guys play less than 50% of the snaps. You can't be missing both running backs, one for 6 games, and then your top guy for the last 2 big games at the end of the year. Waddle cannot be in and out of the lineup. They're going to have a solution for that third wide receiver spot because Chris Kaufman did a great study. And people think that, okay, you got Tyreek and you got Jalen Waddle, you got that covered because they're going to be on the field, right? Well, Miami doesn't necessarily do that. Those 2 guys were together on the field, I believe, 46% of the snaps, okay? Which means 54% of the snaps, it's one or the other on the field, and the other is not on, right? Which means you need that target opposite of those guys to be competent. And if you believe in next gen stats, and why not? Because they actually track the players as if they're dots on the football field. I know you've seen it.
Yeah.
If you look at their stats, it's uncanny. You look at the Miami Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, I believe, was 4th in the NFL in separation, and Jalen Waddle was 8th.
Wow.
And everybody else is way down in the hundreds as far as pass catchers. So nobody distinguished themselves as a third pass catcher on this offense.
Well,
They need that guy.
Well, the thing is, for me, the way I view it is we ran. I think we were third, maybe, or fourth, or something in play action. Second to fourth, I can't remember now. It was there and it's gone. But we were very high in play action. And the play action wasn't genuine play action. It was putting bodies there to help protect. And you saw so many 2-man routes, 3-man routes. And so the problem is that we need to sustain our blocks longer with less extra help and less play action, or you're just not going to be able to get the maximum value of that third receiver, because teams, when you watch the coverage early on, the way they attacked us and the way they had their splits and their depth, it evolved over the season. And I think the Patriots right away, they showed, hey, let's just play over the top, give them the short stuff. The pressure's going to get there. And then so McDaniel kept having to draw guys in and limit, it's not like a typical, like if you watch the Bengals, they put 3 receivers out, 4 receivers out, and their guys, they got 5 guys blocking, and then maybe the running back comes and chips and goes. But we weren't like that. And I'm not sure if investing, if that receiver can block a little bit, that would be really, really nice. I mean, like a bigger guy, a 6'3" guy, 6'2" guy, I think that would go a long way. It's just very hard because you put those 2 guys out there and teams understand what's going on a little bit. And I think we have too much of the same stuff there. So I don't know. If we could just block to that 2-5 consistently, 2-3, it would be a show of shows of shows. It would be beyond comprehension what we could do. So I don't know. That's just my take. Always back to the offensive line. It's like Abbott and Costello back to first base.
Yeah. Although I will tell you this, it's Mike McDaniel and it's in his philosophy. You're going to see those run actions again in the passing game. It's what he believes in it, and you can't argue with it. He's had a lot of success these 2 years.
No.
And Tua loves it. And Tua likes throwing on the hop and on he likes getting at the bottom of his drop and throwing with timing, especially off of a run action, because it gives them a good platform to throw to. And they've made some adjustments. If you remember the second game against New England still played. Essentially, it was a box coverage because it looked like cover 3 at the snap, but those guys were dropping so deep that it was essentially cover 6, and they're in a box, and those guys are almost 25 yards off of the line of scrimmage. So New England was essentially just deciding we're giving you everything underneath, and we're just going to rally and tackle. You're not going to get us over the top. They made one adjustment. They told Tyreek, what if you just ran past that guy? Do you think on the opposite hash to the field side, do you think the safety could get over on you? Let's try it. And sure enough, Tyreek just ran right past them. And that was that bomb that they got in the second quarter. So, the evolution on this offense is going to be something to watch. I think it has a lot to do with Jonnu Smith. And let me say
he's a big ad. He's a big.
I completely agree. Let me say Miami has gotten some help this offseason, okay? First of all, Chris Greer was put on the competition committee, okay? This is the first time that a Miami Dolphin sits on the competition committee since Don Shula. Okay? So we got one of our guys in there. This hip drop tackle that they're banning, that's going to help a lot of those bubble screens, a lot of those smoke screens.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're throwing those smoke screens to Jonnu Smith, who is not a 195-pound wide receiver, okay? He's a 240-pound tight end. That should help them. And, of course, these kickoff rules. Somebody was asking me, well, Barrios is not very good as far as a returner. He's reliable, but he's not very, very good. And I was telling him, you understand that Miami has like the 4 best returners in football? They just don't put them back there. But Devon Achane should get opportunities this year as a return man. And in the playoffs, I would do what Shula did almost every single year. If you remember in the playoffs, he used to put Mark Clayton to return punts. I put Tyreek or Jalen Waddle back there to return punts in the playoffs.
Especially if you grab, Noah guy, you got, you got him, Mostert, Achane, and even if you grab the Nolan, these electric receivers, the worthy guy or whatever, which I don't really want, but still, yeah, we have a load of talent to take advantage of this. And for me, Jonnu Smith, if you,
and I don't think, and sorry to interrupt you, Curtis,
no,
I don't think that people are making.
Yeah,
I don't think people are making enough of a big deal of what the new kickoff rules are.
Yeah.
They're inducing kickoff returns. Okay. This is going to lead to, at least the studies so far have shown, it leads to an increase of around 46 to 56%. Okay. As far as returns. So when you used to have one return a game, now you're going to have somewhere around 4. That means
big.
opportunities.
That's big.
So, yeah, Miami should be primed to take advantage of those.
Well, that's the thing with Miami's strike potential. If you add just a little bit of explosion on that special teams, the games that we lost, it was very little here and there, even despite, some of these games like, the KC game, they were dominating us. And then all of a sudden they lost that domination. We caught back and it was just a play or two here or there. And you add some of these explosive plays on special teams and things can flip dramatically, I got some questions here. What does Beckham bring to the table? Can you give us a breakdown of that?
Well, he can play on the outside, which means that he's going to allow Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill to play on the inside. Odell Beckham Jr. is still a very, very capable player.
Yep.
He was good last year.
Yep.
He was their second leading receiver on that team. They were the number 1 seed, so he was a big reason why they were that good, and that passing game was good. And Lamar Jackson was MVP. This is a stat that I love, and I love repeating it because I find it. I think it's great. Odell Beckham has played 10 seasons, I believe, right? He has never dropped a pass in the end zone.
Somebody brought that to my attention. That's amazing.
And you know how many he's dropped in the red zone?
0.
No, it's 1. Yeah, he did drop one. Yeah, he dropped 1 pass in his career.
Wow.
In the red zone. He dropped 3 passes last year. Okay. He does not drop the football. You're going to play this guy on the outside, and you want to play
Waddle and Hill is great, but they drop it a little bit.
Yeah, and no, if you want to play that 21 personnel, and you don't want to essentially run, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill into the ground, and you want to spell those guys in 21 personnel, Odell Beckham could play opposite of Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, and handle it pretty well. In 11 personnel, he allows you to play them outside, and you can play Tyreek or Jalen Waddle in the slot, which is going to help you, especially on those money downs on third down. He is my top free agent ad if they can do it right now. In the draft, I like Xavier Legette. I think he's the most complete guy. Big, strong, fast, can play outside, inside, and can block and likes block.
Yeah, GAWA has been telling me about Legette. I've been watching some of his tape, and I think so because he could work that underneath stuff when you got Hill and Waddle that to press the leverage. And then he could develop his deep skills and all the route tree. But
and those that watch Xavier Legette and just see this big, strong, giant guy, really physical as a blocker, guy runs 4.34.
Yep, crazy.
All right,
fast.
Okay.
Is it just me? Or does this receiver draft seem freaky fast?
This receiver draft is as good as it's been in ages, and I would be disappointed if Miami did not leave this draft without a top 100 guy as a wide receiver. Hopefully they can add picks. They could trade down and add some picks. But this receiver draft is so deep. I don't remember the last time I could rattle off 6-7 names and be happy with all of them.
Yeah.
There's guys that like Roman Wilson is a fabulous player from Michigan. I love to add him. Malachi Corley is a really good player. Ladd McConkey. All those guys are ready-made. All those guys can help your team win right away and play a lot of snaps. It's a great wide receiver draft. Just a great wide receiver draft. Miami's lucky that they're in the market for one because they're going to get a good one if they get one.
I got a question for you, but oh man, I had a question for you, and then I forgot the question. But let's get back to this question. GAWA says, I know it's early, but how do you expect Miami offense to evolve next season? Thanks. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
before I forget my question a second time. Do you think we could possibly trade back? Do you see trade back in any scenario?
yeah, they're going to need some help from the board. I think you're going to need one of those quarterbacks to drop around you, and then have one of those teams get a little bit nervous and say, you know what, we can't wait no longer. Let's throw the Dolphins 3 picks here.
That'd be nice.
And and go get that 21st pick. So we could take our guy here, take our quarterback here. So they're gonna have to get lucky. There's gonna have to be a guy that a team is in love with and has targeted, and he falls right into your lap, and then you could pull off the trade. Do I foresee it happening? It's always iffy, right? But
Yeah.
on draft day, there's guys that you should root for. Root for Brock Bowers to drop. Root for Michael Penix to drop. Root for J.J. McCarthy to drop. So I think those are the guys that teams are going to look at and say, yes, we got to move up. We got to go get them because these are unique guys at unique position groups that we must get.
Well, it is, I said, I'm a little slow with the draft. I think my processing is much faster on a pro game. But this deep quarterback, deep tackle, and deep receiver draft, it puts Miami in a very enviable position at 21. Very, very enviable position. Oh, but anyway, GAWA, my own offense. What do you expect Miami offense to evolve next season? But I would like to add, what do you think it will involve? What do you see as the evolution?
Well, Jonnu Smith has to be involved, right?
Yeah.
He was a big ad. I think he's going to get a larger target count than what you got last year. You had absolutely zero touchdowns last year from your tight end group. I made a bold prediction in our preseason. We do a preseason pod before the season. We make all our predictions. I actually predicted Miami to win 11 games. They won 11 games. I also predicted that they would play the last game of the season against Buffalo for the division title and that they would win that game. Oddly enough, they didn't, but they did get the 11 wins. But one thing I did predict is that I predicted that they would not have 30 receptions from their tight end group. They had 38. Okay. It was not a great group. I like Durham Smythe. I think Julian Hill is a developing player. I think he's going to be a good player for them once Smythe moves on. But they needed help there. I think that's where most of the evolution is going to come from. And 11 personnel, I think they got to get that popping. Sean McVay, I think, is the one who's had the best evolution off of the Shanahan system. And how did he unlock his offense? He unlocked it with 11 personnel. There was a season where he ran it 68% of the time. So it was that Super Bowl season, actually. So I like to see a little bit more diversity in what they run on offense, and I like to see them pop that 11 personnel because last year there was times where you're running those scissor concepts with Durham Smythe, and I try to explain this to people. He's too slow to run these scissor concepts with Tyreek Hill, and I understand people are going to come back at me and say, "Yeah, but nobody can run with Tyreek Hill." Well, yeah, that's true, but if you have a tight end like Jonnu Smith that runs 4.6. He could reasonably time up with guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to give your quarterback the proper windows to throw into, especially on those scissors concepts.
Well, the thing is, too, you have to, anytime two players are working together, whether it's, blocking or route combinations, the guys on the other side, they've watched his tape all week and they understand what they're seeing. And based on what they view those players as, they're responding. And so when you see
that playoff game, it was stark. I showed this play on OnlyFans. That's our Discord, and I'll plug that at the end of the show.
Definitely.
But I showed that on OnlyFans. There's a play where L'Jarius Sneed, Mike McDaniel, and it's a credit to him, schemed his way into a matchup where he had Tyreek Hill in the slot with the safety, and Kansas City was essentially pretty stretched on defense. They had the wrong personnel that didn't want to call timeout. So they decided, look, we're just going to play middle of the field open, and we're just going to give a little bit of space here. And they ran that scissors concept with Durham Smythe out of the slot, Tyreek Hill outside, Tyreek Hill going to the post, Durham Smythe going to the corner, to the flag. And L'Jarius Sneed's assignment is to play middle of the field open and stay outside of Durham Smythe. You know what he did? He abandoned Durham Smythe and ran over to Tyreek to the
Wow.
post.
Wow.
And
That's
Tua
disrespect.
he essentially said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cover both guys.
Yeah.
Why? Because I can. Because if Tua is going to throw that corner to Durham Smythe, he's too slow to get there, and I'm going to get there before he can. So I'm just going to come off of him to take away this post.
That's a great image right there. That's a great setup.
You know, and when I saw that, I was like, yeah, we need speed at tight end. We just need speed at tight end. We can't call this play. Mike McDaniel, I know what Mike McDaniel's feeling when he calls it. When he calls it and he sees the coverage, he's like, I got him. This is a touchdown. And then he sees the play and he's like, oh, yeah, my tight end is too slow to get out there. So,
tight end
they
is
need to fix that. And I think they've done that. They've done that with Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith, he's not the greatest blocker.
No,
but
he's willing though. He's a willing blocker, and it's not a Mike Gesicki situation.
No. But the thing is, too,
you have a leg up there.
The thing with him is like if you watch, I forgot what comment he really pointed out. He's like, stop running these jet sweeps with Waddle and Hill. You could see it wears down their tread, all that beatings, even those pocket posts we run. If that pocket post can sometimes be Jonnu, and have them do this more outs or flies or comebacks or whatever, anything to work in space where they're not getting drilled. It's Jonnu Smith and the tight end position is it's vast for this team. It's vast. It's vast. Anyway, Larry Thompson has thoughts on drafting QB. Do you see them drafting QB in any round at all?
I'm not the biggest Skylar Thompson fan. But I'm also not a fan of the back end of this draft as far as quarterbacks. So I don't think this is the year.
I don't see it first or second round at all. Some people think that. I don't see that at all.
No, that's crazy talk. They can't afford to do that. They got their quarterback, But you usually want to spot that guy in the 6th or 7th round to develop. They really like Skylar Thompson. I don't, but they really do. So, we shall see. We shall see what that bears this year for Skylar Thompson. I think that it's year 3 for him. He should be affording the Dolphins the opportunity. Not that he's a bad player in Mike White. He's actually a really good guy for that locker room. But Skylar Thompson should be affording them the opportunity to save a little bit of money at the backup quarterback spot this season. If it doesn't happen and they roster Mike White, then you probably have the wrong developmental quarterback, and you probably need to go get one next season.
All right, Angel, do you think we need another off-the-ball linebacker? What do you think about that? You think we need to add any more to the linebacking group?
As of right now, I really like Anthony Walker Jr., but he's more of a fill guy. Jordan Brooks can play both. And David Long's more of a fill guy. Yes, a scrape guy. As of right now, you got Duke Riley as the 4th guy.
Tyndall. What do you think about Tyndall?
I think that the clock's ticking on Channing Tyndall.
I think he's a pumpkin, but that's just me.
Yeah, he had his moments in training camp and it just didn't go anywhere. So we shall see on Tyndall. It's not looking good. It's not like a Cam Smith situation, okay? Cam Smith, I know what I saw. I know what the rest of the beat saw. We saw a guy that was competing and winning. And when you compete and you win as a cornerback in training camp for the Miami Dolphins, you're doing all that winning at the expense of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So you saw him play in the preseason. Like, there's something there. This is a good player, I believe. He just was not trusted with the coverages that Vic Fangio wanted to play last year. I think much more optimistic on Cam Smith than I am Channing Tyndall.
Well, because Smith, to me, I liked his agility. I liked his aggressiveness going after the ball. I liked his overall speed. My only concern was on breaks. He had a slow pop out of his break, and he would get left behind unless it was a shallow. And then my only other concern is he's 180. It's hard to play up as a corner. I like him as a free safety more because he doesn't need as much pop. It'll be interesting to see. I think the kid's definitely got talent. I think he's a little bit of like a hybrid tweener thing. And I think that with Fangio's defense, he just didn't fit. I think it was hard, a complex defense. He was injured a lot. So I think Weaver's defense allows more opportunity for him, and I expect to see stuff out of him. But I'm not certain. I think he's going to be solid at the least. I just don't know if he can go to that good level. That's going to be the thing for me, because it's hard to be that small, 180 pounds and playing, taking those hits and sticking your nose in the trash. And that's another reason why I really love Sweat and guys that can suck up these offensive linemen and these tight ends to keep the secondary free. I like the kid a ton. He showed me a ton. The way he attacked the ball, when you jump and leap after that ball, you expose your body. And I've been there. When you hit that ground, man, you could mess your shoulder up, which I think he might have done. But it shows that he's aggressive. He's out to attack. And that was my favorite thing about him, his ability to attack. It's not easy to do that. So I'm hoping for the kid.
Yeah, he has all those traits that you want in a boundary or perimeter corner. He's a true alpha. Like, he likes to compete.
That's
he's not
important.
shy, and I'm pretty optimistic on him. And I really like our secondary. I love what they've done.
Oh, yeah.
Kendall Fuller is a really, really nice.
Oh, yeah. Ramsey,
addition.
Poyer, Holland. That's crazy.
And Jalen Ramsey, and essentially they're gonna play Jalen Ramsey everywhere. So
yeah, that's what he's best at. He didn't fit. That's a whole thing. I don't want to get into it. It was a little curious because you bring Fangio and you know what you got. And the guys that they had and they asked to learn it now, it was difficult. Ramsey, I think he's better for what Weaver wants to do. The intellectual scheme, the kind of sitting there, not moving him around. I don't think that the secondary we had necessarily was best for what Fangio did.
Yeah. And I go back to, it's a great movie. I'm pretty sure you've seen it. You saw the movie Moneyball.
Yeah. Bits and pieces, YouTube version.
Yeah, there's a scene in there where Billy Bean goes up to his manager, Art Howe, and he tells him, "You're not playing my team the way I designed it to play."
Yeah, that's good. So true.
Okay, and I'm thinking that what happened with Jalen Ramsey last year, and you saw all those snide remarks as soon as Vic Fangio was gone. I think what happened with Jalen Ramsey last year was essentially Chris Grier saying, "I'm paying this guy $22 million a year. Use him how I want you to use him," which is essentially playing him everywhere. And Vic Fangio did not have it within him to use him in that manner, and that's probably why he's not here right now.
But the thing is, too, I don't want to defend Fangio, but I want to try to be fair. So if you get a guy who's known for a thing, and that thing is this, and when you're, say, a caller, offense and defense, you have your thing, whatever that is, that, Tampa 2, Bear, whatever you want to call, and you run it, and you run it, and you run it, and you run it, and you run it. And you learn that when an offense or the opposing guy calls this call, this is what it looks like. This is the response. And it gives you, you get blooded with your style. And when you got guys, I watched a bunch of guys really make mistakes in that secondary. They were off here or there.
Yes. And especially Cater Kohu. I was shocked by how bad Cater Kohu was as a sophomore here.
Yeah. So for me, Cater Kohu, I thought his weakness is mid-late clock and man. And I just don't think you can't allow him to get exposed like that. But Fangio kept dialing up that blitz for whatever reason, whatever. And it kept forcing us to play man, which is not what his defense is about. And, I just felt like if you're going to go, this is my thing. If you're going to go get Ramsey, then you find somebody to run Ramsey right. If you're going to go get Fangio, then you go get guys to help. I just felt like there was an incongruent build here, because it's very difficult to ask guys to win now in a Fangio scheme. You could see it. And the confidence sometimes wasn't there. They didn't know what to do. Guys, especially Long Jr., his coverage, you would see the spacing between the linebackers was off all the time. And you can't, it's an intellectually driven scheme. So I don't think Fangio is a bad guy. I think that, maybe Greer thought, hey, yeah, bring this guy in and he could do it. It ended up not being a good fit. And I just think that.
I said this. I think I popped into one of your threads to tell you this. Miami needs to get out of the business of trying to convince people to play here or work here and get guys that want to be here. And it's look, the Eagles are not going to get charged with tampering, but they should. Because there's just no way that he's announced he's gone and same day he has a job already with the Eagles. Like, that was quick. Like, where was this communication? Okay. So they hashed out a contract inside of 2-3 hours, Last year, if you remember, Miami essentially stole Vic Fangio from the Eagles with a big pile of money.
Yeah.
And maybe Vic Fangio, made a decision based on money instead of where his heart was, which was he's more of a Philly guy. He was there for their Super Bowl run as a consultant, but they hired Sean Desai. He didn't want to step on his old disciples' shoes, so you could understand how he's not going to Bigfoot Sean Desai last year. But as soon as he got fired this year, you could just see Vic Fangio saying, oh, disciple or no disciple, they don't have a defensive coordinator now. and I could go over there in a second. And I know Stephen Ross is going to pay me because that's what Stephen Ross does. Stephen Ross likes writing checks.
I think there was some of that, but even though you heard McDaniel say, he's like, this is not what we thought was going to be. And when McDaniel got there, he wanted Fangio early. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes or whatever. I think Fangio, once things started going south with whatever was going on there, I think he said, hey man, I'm out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if you remember, when Mike McDaniel got hired here, there was a period of time where they were saying, oh, they're doing a defensive coordinator search. And everybody's like, wait a minute, but Josh Boyer's still here. Shouldn't he get the job? Isn't he the heir apparent?
Yeah.
And, Josh Boyer, people are asking, okay, how come he doesn't have a job? Well, he's being paid not to coach right now. Okay. Because he had a contract and we paid him off. But if you look at his resume, the guy owns 3 Super Bowl rings as the defensive backs coach for Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Those guys matter in New England's system. Okay. So, Josh
I thought Boyer was good.
Yeah, he has a hell of a resume. But if you remember when Mike McDaniel got hired, there was a period of time where Mike McDaniel was actually going out there looking for his own guy. And the guy that he identified that he wanted was Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
And Vic Fangio actually turned down the Dolphins then. So he decided, okay, I'll pivot to Josh Boyer for this season. And then the first chance he got to get Vic Fangio, he did.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out how Mike McDaniel envisioned,
Yeah. I mean, and I think too, just for all involved, the transition between philosophies and players is not, it takes time to get the guys there. And I just think that the Fangio system is clearly very difficult. And 23 was a big year for us. And so I don't know. I don't want to drink it. I want to add in that I don't think we're going for 2 Moreland guards. I would like it. I don't think that's where we're going. I think we're going heavy finesse. I think that we're going with what we got with the Wynn, the Eichenberg, a guy maybe in the draft someplace, Driscoll, something like that. I don't think that we're going to invest heavy unless he's in the tackle.
I think it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen what Barry Jackson wrote, but he said that the Dolphins have like a wink agreement with several veteran guards.
Yeah.
You kind of know who those guys are, right? It's Laken Tomlinson. It's Cody Whitehair. It's Dalton Risner. It's those types, right? It could be Andres Pete. Now, Andres Pete's a guy that had a great reputation, but I don't think he's played as well as his reputation.
Didn't Risner have a problem with Butch Barry? Who's the guy who was yelling at?
I believe so. I'm not sure if he was one of the guys that had a problem with Butch Barry. We have soon learned that a lot of the stuff that came out of Denver was kind of BS.
Who was the
You know,
coach that he was screaming at Rizna? I don't know if I want Rizna. I know he's like got talent, but
I'm not sure. You know, he has a good reputation around the league. I'm not sure I would want Risner as well, but it did open my eyes that he fired his agent and hired Drew Rosenhaus.
that's
Okay. All
yeah.
right. And look, I know Drew Rosenhaus. I know his brother Jason as well. They're Dolphin fans.
Yeah.
Okay. It's as simple as that. Like they're super
Risner's a good.
agents.
I think Risner's got a talent. I want guys that are not going to be a problem. You know.
Yeah. Out of all those guys, look, Laken Tomlinson does not miss games.
No.
Now, did he have
But
a bad season last year with the Jets? Yeah, but so did everybody else.
A couple of seasons. I don't know. I wonder if he's gotten a little long in the tooth.
Well, who knows? But he does not miss games.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. That's huge for us. You don't need to do a lot. Just be there.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, almost 8K, brother. Almost 8K.
And he does come from he did work under Mike McDaniel. You know, when Mike McDaniel was the run coordinator, Laken Tomlinson was the left guard. So
my view is that honestly, I believe that there's like this relationship between your top end talent and your depth. And I think the depth on an offensive line is like almost as like if you've got a bunch of guys that are pretty good to fill in for your stars, you don't need as many super. Depth is so important for the offensive line.
Absolutely.
So you get a couple of guys like this, and you know it could play out really well for the Dolphins.
It's the absolute truth, because the fact of the matter is that in the NFL, you know, you have 160 starting offensive linemen, right? Out of those 160, how many would you consider, you know, really good in technique and really good players? Maybe 30 or 40. Okay.
Yes, it would be a small number.
Okay. Then you have another 30 or 40 that can learn a system and can adequately play it. Mm-hmm. And the rest are flawed players that are pretty much all interchangeable, right? Yep. So, you know, if you don't have the studs up front, you're going to have guys that are reasonably good to play, you know, and they have to be reasonably good to play several positions sometimes.
What's huge.
Because what happened with the Bills last year does not happen. The Bills had perfect attendance on their offensive line. 5 guys, nearly 100% of the snaps. I posted it the other day. Their worst guy was Deion Dawkins. He played 96% of the snaps last year. So they had a perfectly healthy offensive line. That does not happen.
Oh, I know.
You will miss 1, 2, and sometimes maybe even 3 guys from time to time, and you got to be able to replace. You cannot allow a right guard or a right tackle or a left tackle to short circuit your entire offense. You just
goes to your point with Tom Laken. You know, the chemistry part is so huge. If there's no other position. I played this hardball thing where you said there's no other position group that is not dependent on anybody, that everyone's dependent on them. But the chemistry, that you build, and you got guys, they might not, that's the whole thing. That's why I'm so intrigued by the offensive line. My little, college stint, I would just sit there and listen to the offensive line coach. It's like this superhero team. And, you can get a guy, and if his skill set works well with the guy next to him, he might not be as good. But if you build this offensive line out with a particular way, a particular meshing of these skill sets, and then you run your offense through that, and they can stay healthy and have that chemistry, you don't need all Hall of Famers and studs. They could just be guys that are like in that 15th range. But if they got good chemistry, good meshing of skill sets, and they stay healthy, it's good enough when you got the right skills.
And I must say, I really like their offensive line coach. I think Butch Barry did a pretty good job last year, considering what the hand that he was dealt as far as injuries. But if you watch him in training camp, I actually learned things watching his unit. And when they go inside, they put the media in the cardio deck, which is like the second floor, so you're overlooking the end zone.
You're making me jealous with all this inside stuff.
So I'm standing there and I'm overlooking the end zone, and the offensive linemen are always working in the end zone,
Oh,
right?
I'd
So
love to
I'm
see
looking at
that,
the
man.
offensive linemen right, they're right below me. So I'm watching them play. I'm watching them do their drills. And Butch Barry, you see how he teaches those split body drills and how he teaches his guys how to get out quick enough so you could be able to reach that split body drill. And
That's
you watch
sweet.
them drill this over and over and over again, and you start to learn, like, okay, he's just teaching them the repetition and the same moves, so when the play is called, it's already in their head
Well, that's
what they
how it's
have to
done.
do.
That's why
Yeah.
I'm a fighter, and that's the whole thing is that you train and repeat so it becomes instinct.
Yes.
And so that's the key. You want this very basic, simple stuff to actually go into the hard drive part and become instinct. And so as Bruce Lee would say, think without, act without thinking, do without doing. And that's the, oh man, I haven't seen a coach drill guys and coach guys in the longest time. I missed that. Oh man,
Yeah, and he explains it, and I've
I'm
heard him
pining.
explain it, and he explained it to the media, and I've said this to people before. Remember that on offense, everybody can move except your running back when it's set, or he can go into motion. Your tight end can move, your wide receiver can move. They can all go into motion. Your offensive lineman cannot move, but the defense can, and the
Yep.
defense will shift gap over. Okay. You got to be able to know how to get to your landmarks. You better know how to hit your split body
Yep.
target. And if you don't, you're essentially asking others around you to pick up your slack. And when other offensive linemen are picking up your slack, you're damaging the play call. It's as
100%.
simple as that.
Offensive linemen, the intelligence of offensive linemen is probably like you got your middle linebackers, you got your quarterback, and then the offensive lineman. Intelligence plays such a huge, huge role. And exactly for what you're saying, because, even when people are talking about, even with Ramsey going from one end of the field and man, as soon as he comes across that field, everybody's responsibilities are changing. And you got to process that information in confidence and then execute. And so that's why offensive linemen that's one thing I love offensive linemen, because there's so much that goes into the offensive lineman. There's the head, the toughness, the grit, I mean, to me, it's the most sexy and interesting unit in the game of football, even more so than a quarterback. I just love it. I wish I could see that stuff again, man. See a coach some players, man. That's awesome. That's great to see. That will build your skill set up in a huge level, man. That's good. Good for you. Good for you, Alf. Lucky you. Okay, hold on a second. Let me wrap this up. One more question, and then we're going to let you do your thing and then wrap this up. I'm very appreciative of your time here. Ace, what's your opinion on Bean cleaning house and revamping? No, he's tied to McDermott. They're going to be here for at least 2 more seasons. I think that the Diggs thing actually gives some space for the owner, looking at Bean and McDermott saying, hey, look, we got this guy. He was a problem. It's going to tie us financially. You guys I think they got 2 seasons. I think that Diggs actually buys time for McDermott. And that's just my take, though. So,
yeah, I tend to agree. I don't understand what they did with Mitch Morse.
Concussions, lots of concussions.
But they just gave his money to La'el Collins. La'el Collins is essentially probably
I think he's
done.
A backup, though. I don't think he's starting. I think Edwards is going to start.
But I think Mitch Morse is a very capable center.
Yeah, but all the Bills fans kept telling me he's had so many concussions. That's what they kept saying. I don't know, but every Bills fan was like, oh, yeah, he's great, but concussions, injuries, concussions. They're like, he's 1 concussion away from being done. So, but they're paying dead money for him too, I think, aren't they?
Yeah. But they're transporting all the pain into this season. So they should be okay going forward. And I've heard some people say, oh, they're going to trade for T. Higgins. I don't think that's in the cards. I don't think they're going to take a $31 million dead cap hit to go get another expensive wide receiver. I think that they're going to go into the draft for one. But that's the good news. The good news is that around the Buffalo Bills, there's blaring, shining lights saying we're taking a receiver. So who knows? Maybe you might be able to, take a pick from the Bills. Maybe
Yeah,
the
there you
Bills
go,
are
right?
the one that move up.
Then hope they grab the kicker.
Yeah.
All right, Alf. Listen, I won't hold you up anymore, Matt, brother. I really appreciate everything. It's very, I don't want to sound arrogant or whatever, but it's very rare that I feel like, oh man, I got to get back into my studying to bone up and you do that. You break out stuff to make me check myself and go, you know what? Oh man, I gotta do better, man. Get back in the books. So I appreciate that. So tell us everything about you, where to find you, how to get in contact with all the great content you provide, except for those hard Twitter slices you do. I'll never get in a Twitter battle with you, brother. So just give us the whole lowdown.
Yeah, you want to listen to our podcast, you could go to 3 yards per carry. That's the number 3 yards per carry. Anywhere you get your podcast, we're everywhere. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere, Google Podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, we are there. You could go to our Twitter feed where you could see it right there. Okay, it's at the number 3 yards per carry. And you can look for our podcast wherever you get your podcast. If you want to become a member of our Discord, you could go to our Twitter account. It has the instructions right there on the pinned tweet. You could go to discord.gg/onlyfins, and you could become a member there for $3 a month.
Cheap.
Yep.
Cheap.
And we have well over 2,000 members there. So, you could chat with like-minded Dolphin fans. You got access to me, CK, and Simon Clancy. We're all pros in this game. Together we have a combined 60 years in media.
That's a lot.
So, Simon Clancy, the draft is his thing. If you're going to be on our Discord, Simon Clancy releases a draft guide every single year. So he knows all these prospects. He goes to the Senior Bowl. He talks to the coaches,
I got to figure out what this Discord thing is, man. That's highfalutin talk in the tech world, man. I've heard it. My son uses it for something like that. I'll ask him. Yeah.
It's good to put video. You can put video up, and it's really good. It's to interact with fans, and like I said, we have over 2,000 like-minded Dolphin fans there. We don't have none of that Twitter stuff, so.
That's sweet.
There's no screaming matches in our Discord.
It's football. It's football. It's not. I don't know why people take everything so.
Yeah, the only screaming matches in our Discord is when the Dolphins lose or when they go down 3-0 in the first 2 minutes of a football game.
Yeah, so game day is totally different. You're allowed to freak on game day. Even me.
Yeah, on game day, sometimes because I'm not on there. Look, so if you're expecting me to be on there on game day, that's not going to happen. I'm in my backyard watching football on game days. But on game days, I've been want to check out the temperature in that room. And yes, there's been many a time that it's 3-0 with 13 minutes left in the first quarter, and people are just freaking out. Why aren't we up 3 touchdowns already?
Well, that's the whole thing. Football, in the end, it's a game. It's about passion. It's about excitement, But let's hope we can win. I'm getting closer to this grave, man. We got to win soon, brother. We got to win soon. But Alf, thank you, guys. I appreciate all you guys coming on with the comments. Check out Alf. He's great. I don't really check many guys out, but he's definitely the guy I won't check out the most. So keep supporting him, and I appreciate everything you guys do. Alf, again, thanks for giving some class to the joint over here. Catch you soon. Guys, have a good night. Be well, and go Fins.